prototype that became Vader Immortal, and then also on Secrets of the Empire before finally working for the last couple of years on Vader Immortal.
Fantastic. John, would you like to go next?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is John Nguyen. I'm an experience designer here at ILMxLAB. I was a level designer for Vader Immortal episodes 1 and 2, and then became the design director for Vader Immortal episode 3. Let's see, I started at ILMxLAB maybe 4 years ago. I think actually next month is my 4th year anniversary here. And so I've kind of seen how the company has grown and, making all the cool stuff that we're making now. Before joining XLab, I was a content designer for MMOs. So I was in the MMO space for a little while, and then VR kind of blew up, and now I'm here making some awesome VR experiences.
Fantastic, cool. And Ben, you said that you spent a lot of years in Industrial Light and Magic. Do you want to tell to all our guests here the movies that you actually been involved working on? Have you worked on any Star Wars trilogy movie at all?
Yes, I was a visual effects supervisor on Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones.
Wow.
And so the sequences I worked on were actually the very beginning of the Clone War. I got to start the Clone War with the big battle in the desert on Geonosis, and also Droid Factory sequence on that. And then other films I've worked on include films dating back to Twister, and then Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, Avengers Age of Ultron, and more recently some Darren Aronofsky films like Mother and Noah, and I've done one of the Pirates of the Caribbean films, a Terminator film.
Wow.
Quite the resume.
I'm pretty sure that we could stay here talking hours about all the stories, about the development of those movies, and especially the visual effects. I can see the public that is very, very excited about all the list of movies that you shelled out.
Great, thank you.
So, can you please tell us a little bit more about the history of ILMxLAB and what you do there, and how you work, and the work you do to reach the public through consumer products like Vader Immortal, but also through theme parks and LBE and other channels?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. So ILMxLAB is Lucasfilm's immersive entertainment studio. So we were kind of challenged with coming up with new ways to tell stories using new emerging technologies. That includes VR, AR, location-based experiences, and of course, theme park attractions. So working here at ILMxLAB, we get to collaborate we're really blessed to collaborate with Lucasfilm Story Group themselves. So, the Star Wars stories that we're making are canon Star Wars stories. That's cool. And then also just, we get to work with Industrial Light and Magic, which is a visual effects side of the studio. And we get just the talent of their artists and animators and visual VFX artists. We get to collaborate with all of those guys, and that's super awesome. And of course, Skywalker Sound, they're in studio here. Audio is half the experience, so it's super awesome to also collaborate with them, and all together, we are kind of the little hub that creates kind of new emerging experiences that aren't quite traditional and are a little bit difficult to wrap your head around.
It seems that you have the coolest job in the world, and I believe that a lot of people here would love to be in your place. Can you? Yeah, I can imagine. Can you please tell us a little bit more about, you've been working with the Star Wars franchise for a while now at ILMxLAB. Apart from the Secrets of the Empire, there are the Trials of Tatooine, and now Vader Immortal. Can you please tell us a little bit more about the difference and the different approach that you had in design and production of Vader Immortal compared to the Secrets of the Empire, that was very kinetic and a very action-oriented kind of experience, while Vader Immortal feels a way more like immersive theater, for example?
Yeah, we one of our watchwords at ILMxLAB is step inside our stories, And so we were very interested in narrative. And even Secrets of the Empire has a story component, but it is a very action-orientated experience. So Vader Immortal actually represented the fruition of a lot of our testing and experimentation to try and explore what it looks like to tell a story in VR, what you, the participant in the story, might want to feel in VR. And so it was definitely a trying to look at what would be a good way to tell this story and how much interaction you would want and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and between Secrets of the Empire and Vader Immortal, I mean, for each project, we kind of really leaned into what made them special. So Secrets of the Empire was a location-based VR experience. So you're out there, you're on a tetherless backpack VR, you get to kind of walk around and kind of touch the environment. So we really tried to design out the experience, really take advantage of that, let you kind of touch things that you didn't think you could touch before, move you through really large, vast spaces. And for Vader Immortal, we know that was an at-home experience. So, we focused on telling a very nice, long narrative story, lets you really be involved and really be a participant in the story. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of how we approach these two different experiences.
Okay, and I bet that's targeting two different devices, like for example the Oculus Rift and the Oculus Quest, may have been a challenge in terms of design due to the fact that the Oculus Quest is room scale, while the Oculus Rift is tethered, and also not everyone has a room scale setup in their home.
It's true. We'd started developing Vader Immortal before we even knew what platform it would be on. And in fact, our early prototype, one of our early prototypes was on Vive, actually, that led to this. So we weren't specifically going to a device until, as we started we started talking to Oculus, and they said that they were very interested in the project. They were just about to produce the Oculus Quest. And so we went down to Oculus, down to Facebook, and they showed us the first prototype of the Quest. And it just was such a game changer. And we were like, oh, this is the future. Really, this is going to make a big difference with VR. So one of our sort of driving aims was to really try and push the visual fidelity of what we could do in virtual reality. That's something we've been trying to push a lot. And so we still wanted to do that. And so there was a little bit of a sensibility, oh, well, it's the device is not going to be as powerful. Maybe, you have to compromise. And we're like, nope, we're going to try not to. So we still developed for the Rift and tried to make the Rift version look as good as we could, and then gave ourselves a problem. How do we adapt that to the Quest? And then the other aspect was, how do we utilize the fact that you're not tethered on the Quest, and so you can spin around and do that sort of thing. So in things like the lightsaber dojo, we then tailored that so that the enemies are coming from all different directions and that sort of thing. So you can actually, if you're on the Rift, it sort of defaults to a 180, thinking that you'll be tethered. But you can override that, of course, if you don't mind getting wrapped up in your cable. And all of us in VR face it now are pretty skilled at not getting wrapped up in our cables. So, yeah.
Yeah, I miss my monitors every single time I make a swing.
Good job. Yeah.
And you did an amazing job. I mean, porting the graphics that you designed for the Rift to the Quest, and the graphics on the Quest looks as good to the one that we have on the Rift. Can you please tell us a little bit more about the rendering pipeline and the development process of and the technology, the secret sauce that you have to have this such a great visual representation and visual fidelity in the experience?
Well, the secret sauce is a lot of hard work, I would say. Basically, it is interesting because we did, we were developing on Unreal Engine, and fortunately, Epic Games was a great partner in this, as was Oculus, who were, of course, developing the hardware. And so we started, as I mentioned, we developed for the Rift originally, so we started looking at how do we adapt that, how do we get all the geometry on there. And so we used Unreal's internal lodding system so that we could have different levels of LOD. Like everyone who develops for these platforms knows you've got to use levels of detail a lot to try and get everything to run. And so we actually had 3 levels of LOD for the Rift, and then when we got to level 3, so 0, 1, 2 for the Rift, once we got to level 3, that was our level for the Quest. And we ended up, to be honest, developing specifically the assets for the Quest. So we developed from the Rift and then put a lot of work into making them run on the Quest. We also wanted to do things like have shadows. Like the first thing everyone said was, well, you can't have shadows. And I'm like, yeah, we need shadows of some sort. So we used ambient occlusion heavily. Those were some of the techniques that we sort of used in movies, many years ago, and developed actually on a film I was on. Pearl Harbor was the first film to really use ambient occlusion a lot. So we heavily pushed that technology. And we also we wanted to, the lighting tools available to us, we actually worked with Epic so that they could give us a spotlight that we could actually use on the Android platform. So
Oh, wow.
there's a little bit of tech help we got from the Epic people as well.
Yeah, and the VR community. Oh, sorry. Actually, I want to thank the VR community because they actually helped quite a bit too. We're all kind of in this challenge together, trying to develop for VR. The technical requirements are pretty insane. So even our early talks, I remember kind of going on the forums and seeing, forward rendering versus deferred rendering, which is kind of you should use.
But remember, we did a bunch of tests. So there was a prototype that was before this, which we call Bryce, and it was a pretty interesting thing. But we did a bunch of tests with the different types of rendering, what sort of spectral highlights you got, all of that sort of stuff, and definitely, the community continues to be great for as a source.
And you mentioned Unreal and Epic that help you developing not only the technology, but also the kind of framework that you use to bake in the lights and to create the shadows and to implement ambient occlusion and so on. You used Unreal in many of your experiences, both for LBE and for home VR. Is this related to the fact that Unreal Engine as a development and production pipeline that is more similar to the classic visual effects pipeline, or is that like a platform of choice for other reasons?
It's true that ILMxLAB has mostly used Unreal, so we're very comfortable with that. It's a good development platform, but honestly, the choice was the rendering quality, really, from my point of view, that I was really happy with the look of things that I've seen out of it. And I do think that they are committed to rendering excellent. So that's probably the big thing.
And you certainly made a fantastic job because the graphics in the game looks amazing. As it looks amazing, I mean, we can see this image behind you of the TIE fighter and the lightsaber. It looks so epic. It's incredible, the sense of scale in your world, and which is something that, of course, in games like on a franchise like Star Wars are extremely important. I'm talking about huge starfighters or Vader himself. The physicality of Vader getting close to you is so frightening. I mean, how did you achieve this kind of level of fidelity? Sometimes the VR games are you feel too small or too big compared to the world, and sometimes you can see that the scale of the world is a bit off with different assets that are too big if compared to the real world. In Vader Immortal looks just right, and this is a fantastic achievement. Can you please tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah, we did a lot of experiments to get the right scale. Obviously, a key thing about making an experience like Vader Immortal, given that a lot of people playing it are Star Wars fans and they really are doing this because they want to step into Star Wars, and then you don't want to come in and Vader himself be disappointing. So we knew that was really key. And we actually took Vader, we took David Prowse's height as he was with the shoes and stuff he wore in the original trilogy, and we took that inside, and then we got a ruler in there, set it up next to him, and then gave ourselves the ability to scale Vader up and down, and then had a bunch of people come in, all sorts of different people, and say, how does he feel to you? Does he feel right? And it wasn't far off, to be honest, because he was so imposing originally. But we did make the choice not to dynamically scale the worlds to the player height, because there are all sorts of things, and we found that the little bit of testing that we did on that it's sort of a bit disorientating if you're not seeing the world at your normal size and height. So it was really just saying, okay, what Vader is going to fit most people. And so we have some really tall people. Dennis Nguyen, who's one of our VFX suits at ILM, and he's really tall. He's a legend and did all of the Star Wars films, all of the early ones. He was like, wow, Vader looks a little bit, he's smaller than I thought. And I'm like, Dennis, you're the same size as him. And when we make a movie, the camera's always just a little bit lower. It's sort of like from a 5'6" sort of thing, always looking up. So, yeah. But I think in the end, all that testing paid off, and people felt like, yes, he's imposing and scary.
It's really a testament to playtesting. I mean, it's really, for all developers out there, like something as simple as Vader's height. You wouldn't think to really playtest that to make sure that he feels right. But it's really important because people, different audiences and different kind of experienced users have a different feeling of what he should be. So just gathering data and then making the right choices from the data is always going to be helpful.
Yeah.
And the proximity of the characters in Vader Immortal is very near. I mean, you can interact with those characters from a very close contact. And I can imagine that getting the motion capture session right has been quite of a challenge for you, because you can literally see every single movement of every muscle and every facial interaction with the characters and the non-playing characters in game. Do you have any stories about lessons learned or some specific kind of strange techniques that you had to adopt in order to create an effective motion capture for Vader Immortal?
I think that's something that we can continue to get better at, honestly. One thing that we were lucky enough to have was a great team of animators led by Colin Hennon and Chip Carl on the experience. And so a common mistake we made during motion capture was not getting the characters close enough. And you really have to essentially make sure you are always, luckily we're doing motion capture at Industrial Light and Magic, and we have a virtual cinema set up there that allows us to really, did I jump then? Sorry. That allows us to look through a virtual camera at all times and that sort of thing. So it was a matter of very carefully putting that virtual camera where the player was going to be. Staging things like you're in a play, it was probably more like a play than the movie staging that, I was certainly used to. And then playing to the player. And so making it, try and feel like characters may be having a conversation, but they always include you. We found that if the characters ignored you, that was one of the things that actually really, between the prototype and what we did for the final version you see, that was the big change. Was the prototype, you were more a fly on the wall and not really a participant as such. And it was just, you felt disappointed because these characters were standing there ignoring you, and you've been hoping for years to get your chance to stand next to Darth Vader, and he just ignores you. It's not very satisfying. So that was definitely a key thing, making sure they pay attention to you. And we'd always we would film, we would do the motion capture session, go back. John and the team would get that into our experience. And then we'd go in there and say, oh man, they aren't turning to us enough. And we rework the line so that the line might then reference the player a little bit more, talk about their ancestry, talk about some aspect that ties them. And we change the staging.
Yeah.
So that it felt more like you were included, you were part, you always felt like, we tried to make you feel like you were always part of what was happening.
Yeah, and for the character design, the observant player out there might notice no one has mouths. So, being smart about the creative sometimes really helps you in the long run. And for us, Star Wars, we're super lucky that characters wear masks. We designed the character, intentionally without a mouth, and then it also led into a little bit of his just character design and his personality, really. That's
yes, yes. Admiral Carius, yes. Originally, we were like, oh, maybe we'll try and push forward a talking human character, and then we were like, like all of us, anyone who's a dev here, there's certain realities of scope that you have to run into and deal with. And it actually turned out to be a good feature for Carius because he was always supposed to be this world-weary lifer. He's the Imperial officer that we meet at several times during the experience. And he was supposed to be this sort of world-weary guy who's seen it all and done it all. And when we said, okay, well, we probably won't be able to have him talking or whatever, we were like, oh, great, well, he's undergone some cataclysmic injury that sort of slashed across his body, and it made him a bit more sinister as well, which was helpful.
Yeah, actually, picture's gone now, but a funny story about how we animated Zoe, because she is a character that hovers and kind of moves around the world on a little hover thing. Our mocap actress actually was on a hoverboard throughout the mocap session, so that her lower body was nice and stationary, so it felt like once she's in character, it actually gave her a lot of character as a mocap actress too, to kind of move around on the hoverboard. So that was something that we kind of just discovered during the middle of development.
Oh, I've frozen. Can you guys still see me?
Yeah. We can see you moving. Okay. It's fine.
Okay. And, good. Okay.
And thank you for taking us through the character animation process. But in Vader Immortal, there's also something even more. You have object interaction. And one of the first things that blew me away was the interaction that you have with the holocron. That the first time I picked up looked a lot to me like the cube from Hellraiser that opens up and animates and so on. And I wanted to know a little bit more, what's the process behind the design of those interactions? Did you get inspiration from famous objects in movies like the cube in Hellraiser, or from the objects in your everyday life? How did you manage also the physicality of the objects? I mean, welding a lightsaber feels real, and I don't remember having so much fun in my life in VR as I had in the dojo with my lightsaber, and it feels really there, and you can feel the physicality of the weapon. So can you tell us a little bit more about this object interaction design process?
Yeah, actually, sorry, Nick, I'm gonna correct you really quick. It is not quite up on. Just in case there are fervent Star Wars fans out there, we actually called it the puzzle cube, and it's an ancient device unique to our experience. It's not
okay. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Because it's very inspired by the holocron, look and feel wise. So we're trying to make an ancient version of it. But just in case there's a crazy Star Wars fan out there writing some.
Oh, of course, I don't want to be blasted tomorrow. Yeah.
But it's really interaction design. We wanted to make sure Vader Immortal was as accessible as possible to everyone. So we were very cognizant and careful about our interactions to make sure that they were simple enough that people just understood how to interact with something, but we give big payoffs throughout the interaction. So a simple kind of gesture or a button press really kind of gives a nice big explosion of animation, sound, VFX to really feel like you're kind of connected to the object. It also helps with the story. In our story, your character has this, hidden bloodline that activates stuff sometimes, and we lead into that a little bit of, it makes sense that when this object kind of touches your hand, it goes crazy and it kind of starts activating really awesomely. That kind of helps go into the story a little bit and explains why the object is kind of reacting like that.
And I mean, you mentioned the sound effects. I think that we lost Ben. Oh no, he's there.
No, yeah, I froze. Sorry.
It's okay, no worries. You mentioned the sound interactions and the soundtrack and the sound editing in Vader Immortal is actually really good, is mind-blowing. Did you work with Skywalker sound for that? Did you had a chance to work with people that are actually have been actually working on the Star Wars trilogy for sound editing and sound effects?
Yes.
Yeah.
Kevin Boland and Paul Staunton were two of the Skywalker sounds team that worked with XLab a lot. And so they both have experience in real time, and we were able to draw on the experience that they and others have with the film. So we had, of course, access to the whole library of the film stuff, but we also had several people who were working on the films. Sorry, John.
Taking a drink. I know someone up there.
Yeah. So we had access to all of that sort of thing, and I think that made a huge difference. And they put a lot of work into things like making the lightsaber sound correct, so that when you held it up next to your ear, it sounded like you'd expect, the way it made its noises as you swung it. All of the interactions, they put a lot of work into. We actually used WY2 within Unreal to do that, which gave us the sort of flexibility we needed for creating an experience.
Yeah, and
wow.
they worked really closely with us, the designers, so we can kind of beat out a sequence as kind of dramatically as possible. And sound and audio is half the experience. So for example, when you first see the lightsaber in Episode 1, we really want to make sure that moment landed with as much impact and huzzah as possible. So you enter the room, we lowered the audio a little bit. We had triggers throughout the experience that designers and the sound guys kind of worked and collaborated with to make sure that once you cross this threshold, the music can start kicking in just a little bit. Be it closer to the lightsaber, the music starts pumping up quite a bit more. We're setting kind of data and triggers between us in the gameplay side and them in the sound side. Pick up the saber, we know that you picked it up. Nice flourish of music, or actually, sorry, you pick up the saber, it gets quiet first because we want the actual impact of turning on the saber.
Yeah.
Really being a nice kind of flourishy audio treatment right afterwards. And then, of course, you go right into battle, and the battle music starts kicking in. You're getting adrenaline going. You're starting to feel badass. And then once that's all good and through, you kind of get the release of a nice, awesome lightsaber battle.
Yeah.
Wow. And this really worked during the experience. I remember how excited I was when I welded the lightsaber for the first time in Vader Immortal, but also how excited I was when for the first time, I tried my force powers, which is another great feature of Vader Immortal. And I believe that I never felt force being so natural in any other video game that I tried. And I'm a longtime fan of LucasArts and the Lucasfilm games, from X-Wing, TIE Fighter, and Jedi Knights of all sorts. But in Vader Immortal, you can really feel like a Jedi there. And the interaction feels so natural. Can you tell us a little bit more about the discovery process behind how you design the user interaction for the use of the Force in Vader Immortal?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're making a Star Wars experience. There's going to be two kind of truths to that. One is you have a lightsaber, and the other is you're going to use the Force. So I think from the very beginning, we knew that Force was going to be a thing. And it actually works so well in VR, right, Ben? Like, you just...
Yeah, I think, you wanted to be... I think anyone who's gone in VR, you're like, oh, wow, I want to use the Force in VR. So it was definitely no question that we wanted to do that. And we wanted to make it as natural feeling as possible. We actually did some interesting experiments with completely buttonless Force, but you still need a way to have intent. You still need to detect intent. So if you did purely buttonless Force, it becomes very contextual. And so you can't then elect, oh, I want to release the object here or there. So we ended up having to grudgingly agree that it would be a button, but then it was like, okay, how do we make it like a grab function? So it feels like any object you're picking up in VR. It just happens to be that the object's across the room, you know, or 30 feet away or whatever. So
Yeah,
it was
exactly. I mean,
minimizing the interface, but so it just felt natural. And then beyond that, it was gestural.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's if you really think of what the Force is and how we use it in our context, you're kind of picking something else from really far away. So we kind of really lean in on that. You know that your grab button right here kind of will grab something. You know, so the extension of that is you're grabbing something from afar. So we're using the same button because it's the same kind of context. And then, you know, the force powers will just be controlled after that. But really, we want to make sure that it was easily learnable and there's no new kind of button techniques or any new powers that you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably we need to give some space to the public for some questions, because I can see them jumping and super excited about your stories about the Force. So let me activate the questions for the public, and I will start allowing the hand rises for you, so you will be able to ask questions to Ben and John about Vader Immortal. Now you're gonna be able to raise your hands. Okay, so I think that's the first person to raise hand has been Sunny.
Great, can you hear me?
Yes, hi
Yes.
Sunny, how you doing?
Awesome. Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. Thank you. This is wonderful. I love these games. They're fantastic. You guys did a wonderful job. So thank you. Actually, I've got plans to go to an enclosed basketball court in my town, like a community center, to go there and really just go all out in the dojo. So it'll be a lot of fun.
That's fun.
Yeah. But I wanted to say thank you for the focus that you put on accessibility in this game, and also for the fact that the main character that you play isn't set with any sort of gender. So I feel totally at home there as a woman, whereas, you know, in like the gaming community it tends to be more masculine. But I felt like home. It was badass. So thank you guys. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a very conscious decision. And it's interesting because we had a couple of leading game designers come in and they're like, well, you don't have protagonist voice here, you know, because we don't give you a voice. But we just felt it was really important to do that. And from the very start, the idea was, you know, to have a mix of genders in the characters, and even we have a non-gendered character in the third episode. But it was literally just trying to make it feel accessible. And then on the accessibility functions, you know, we have a lot of different sensibilities within XLAB for people's comfort level in VR. And we actually have a group of people, Sarah Barrick and others, who look after accessibility and are kind of constantly on us to make sure that we are trying to make the experiences accessible. So that was very, very conscious.
Yeah,
You did
and,
it.
I mean,
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. I mean, we're inviting you to step into our story, so you should come as you are.
I appreciate it.
Great. So as a second question, we have, okay, sorry. We have Creo Ren.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Hi.
Oh, so as a quick question, I know I've been enjoying a lot of time in the dojo, you know, using Force Lightning in episode 3 and being able to throw the lightsaber around. I was just wondering, was there a particular reason why you guys decided to keep those kind of abilities focused in the dojo and keep them out of the story mode?
You know, the story modes, basically we sort of devised the story mode up front. We knew we wanted you to get the Force.
when you hear that. It really puts you, make you excited and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Well, in terms of the
I put all
duration-
3 of them. Yeah.
Great.
I put
Well,
all 3.
you know, if you put all 3, the story ends up being, you know, between 90 minutes and a couple of hours, which is about the length of a movie. And this is a movie you can actually step inside. So, yeah, it's interesting. We definitely did hear from hardcore gamers that they felt that the story mode was a little short. We were thinking of it more as like it as a film and a film interaction terms. And, you know, it's definitely something that as we develop new experiences, we'll have to think of more. But I think as a narrative, it sort of works, and the length of the episode seems appropriate for this story.
Yeah, that was definitely our goal, to make a, you know, it's not a game per se, it's an experience. There's no gates and no kind of areas where you just are just playing just to play. Everything that you were doing was contributing to the story and move everything forward. So that was really just a conscious decision to, you know, make a experience. What would it be like to step inside a Star Wars movie? And you know, that's kind of how long.
And we didn't want to make it hard for you or frustrating for you. We felt that people would be trying VR the first time. A lot of people who tried this, and so it would. You know, we wanted to make it so that it was inviting, and honestly, that you could get on with the story and not be sitting there blocked by a puzzle for, you know, an hour. We definitely, it's hard in VR to jump out to YouTube and look at how to get through the next level videos.
And the next question is from Daniel.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
There will be Vader Immortal episode 4.
We would love to do an episode 4, yes, but at the moment we're working on all sorts of other projects. But yes, I mean, we'd love to if we have the opportunity.
We finished what we wanted to say in Vader Immortal, and so there was a little tease at the end there, what's to come, but as a story,
the story comes to a conclusion. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then we have ILMVR for the next question.
Hi guys, ILMVR. I'm Veronica here, talking from Spain. I don't know if you can hear me correctly.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Fine, because I am in another world. I don't know if the microphone was working correctly. My question is about if you have any ideas of dubbing this into Spanish, or if it's gonna be always in English.
I believe we are working on localization. I don't have the full list, but yes, I think Spanish is definitely on that list. So that is something that we're working hard on at the moment.
Yeah,
okay,
we
cool.
want as many people as possible to experience this. So we're trying, we're applying different avenues, get this out to as many people as possible.
Yeah. It's just a matter of, having the time and the resources to get it done.
And we have a next question from Jason, sorry.
Yeah, Jason. Can you hear me?
No, Jason. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. It's an incredible game. I think I remember when it launched in London, people were paying to borrow VR headsets to have it go. I was fortunate to get it free enough. Yeah, literally, it was crazy. People were like, you have to try this. I fortunately got my Quest recently and got it bundled in. I think it sets the bar for what a VR game can be in terms of high-end quality. And having worked at Activision Blizzard before, I know a little bit about that. So I was curious more on if your next ventures, would you, and this links back to length, now you've kind of introduced to people what VR can be in terms of the high quality bar for the future iterations, whether they be Star Wars or other projects in different areas and genres, would you look into making a much longer, deeper game? And for example, with a much higher price point, I would imagine, because I imagine the production of this was extremely intensive. Would that be on the cards for the future, and would you always be looking at setting this quality bar so high? And to link to story-driven narrative, would you have something similar to kind of the, Heavy Rain and those guys were doing with very emotive-based storytelling? I just think it'd be really cool to have a super high-quality production VR game that's quite lengthy and narrative-driven. And I think from what I've seen in the whole space, I think you guys have the best shot at that. I'm just curious if you're going to work on that.
I mean, we would love to. Certainly,
that sounds awesome. Let's do that.
Yeah, we definitely want to keep quality up, and the visual quality is something a lot of us are there to try and push those boundaries. Steve Henricks, our environment designer, and Ron and our lighting guy, and Jeff Greeby, our VFX guy, are all really focused on pushing a lot of that stuff, and the whole team is. In terms of a longer, deeper thing, yeah, I mean, absolutely. And it is great that we are part of Lucasfilm and get to work with Lucasfilm Story Group, so there's a whole rich background there. So yeah, I mean, we can't obviously promise anything or whatever, but I think that that's something we all want to see.
Yeah, nothing to announce or anything like yet. But I mean, like you said, everything you were talking about, we were totally in on that. Like, we understand kind of that's what next cool experience could be. So we're just exploring all sorts of avenues on, what is the next type of big experience we can make.
Yeah, sounds good. Excited for it.
Thank you.
Okay. So, and we have another question. I think that we have time for 2 or 3 questions still. We have Mau5.
Hello there. My question is that, first, I am Paul McCarthy, talking from Ireland, top of the morning to you. And my question is, when playing the game for the first time, which of the 3 episodes was your favorite of them?
Which one? You take that one, John. Yeah.
Well,
I love them all equally.
Yes, I love all of them equally. I don't know. I'm gonna actually say episode 3 because
there you go. I thought you.
I mean, I'm gonna have to say it. It's the one I direct.
John was the design director on episode 3, so he's got to say it.
But
His
really, I know the whole thing was we weren't segmented or anything. There wasn't like 3 different teams working on each episode. We all worked on it together. The whole team contributed. So we like to think of it more as one long experience and not really a segmented or divisive episode or anything like that.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
And we have a next question from Nate.
Hello.
Hi.
The only complaint that I hear about the game that's kind of bugged me is that it's 3 episodes, and I hear this from people like they play the first episode and they're like, "Ooh, I'm really interested." They play the second episode, they're like, "Oh, I'm still interested," but then they get to the 3rd episode, and if they're not interested at that point, or maybe they get disappointed by the ending, they've already sunk like $60 into all 3 episodes. Why make it 3 episodes instead of one long experience? Like one long continual experience, like Boneworks, it's 40 hours, or other experiences like that.
With the rich environment and the detailed characters and stuff, you run into a limitation on the amount of data you can just put in a typical downloadable package that will go to something like Quest. So that was one issue, and also development. We really wanted to get it out there. But honestly, we always thought of it as 3 episodes. It was always that sort of narrative arc lent itself to that. So that was sort of there from day one, I'd say.
Yeah, and it's part of the Star Wars universe, right? So a trilogy fits perfectly.
We like Star Wars.
It's a trilogy, yeah. Yes, yeah.
And we have time for another question from Mr. Mike. If he's going to accept. Hello, Mr. Mike?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
Yes.
You're on. Go on.
I have not played this game yet, and I might have to buy a new headset just to play it.
You should.
What my main question is, what was it like seeing Vader for the first time?
Oh.
What was it like? What does it feel like in the game now? Or
Yes.
hopefully it feels pretty good. That was a big one of the things we talked about earlier in the discussion was we really tried to make that work. That was a big, that was probably the most important thing to us. In fact, we knew right up to the top of Lucasfilm, Kathy Kennedy, that we would be in trouble if Vader did not feel like what you would hope. So that was probably the thing we worried the most about. Now, we'd done a very, very early prototype that they actually showed at one of the Star Wars conventions, where Vader sort of walks out to on a platform on the balcony of his castle, and just having him walk up next to you, we realized, oh, it's going to be pretty imposing. But we put in a lot of work. We looked at what they'd done in Rogue One successfully, where he meets Commander Krennic, and the door opens and there's a billow of mist and he sort of comes walking down. And we just thought, wow, that's something like that is going to be really wild in virtual reality. So we tried that, and then, there were people like, oh, maybe you should just be outside the door. But it's like, no, you want to be dreading this a little bit as he walks towards you. So, and, the music, the sound of his footsteps, the Skywalker sound put in there, and even just the foreshadowing before he arrives, I think was all set up to try and make that moment feel imposing.
Yeah, I mean, Vader is just too iconic. He will live beyond all of us here in this room. So, it takes a lot of care to work with such an iconic character. And, as a Star Wars fan myself, it's just, you tell almost any Star Wars fan who you want to meet in Star Wars and in VR. I think a big percentage is going to say Vader. So it was just part of wish fulfillment, part of just fancy fulfillment for us to kind of get you in a room in VR and staring down, or up rather, to Vader for most of us.
Okay, we have one last question, and also after I believe that we're going to invite you on stage to have a selfie all together. So the last question is going to be from Jason Park. Jason, you're on? Jason, we can't hear you. Yes, of course we can.
I don't think there's a lot we can describe. It was funded as one.
If you were a developer, you knew also. You knew the answer to this question.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it was one. It was funded as a complete.
Yeah, but we can talk about timeline, right? How when we started the project. How
Absolutely.
That would be very interesting. Also, if you can cover quickly the development process for a new platform like the Oculus Quest. I mean, I believe that has been quite going against time due to the very short time between the start of the project and the shipping of the headset.
Yeah, I believe we got the Quest halfway into development, almost about halfway into development of episode 1. So we're already planning out like almost everything about episode 1 for the Rift. And then, we pivoted just a little bit to make sure that we can fit all this into the Quest.
I think that was the big thing. As soon as we got the Quest, trying to get the experience onto the Quest as quickly as possible, just so we could work out what the hell whether we had to change too much to get it working on there. And then at the same time, making a beautiful corner on the Quest so that we could see, okay, how far can we push the stuff. But we probably started, a lot of the team was on Secrets of the Empire. So we'd done a prototype, and then we did a second prototype while we were finishing up Secrets of the Empire. That Colin McPie, the design director on the first two episodes, did a bit of a small prototype. And So that was, we probably got the main crew on towards the end of 2017.
Yeah, it's 2017.
Yeah, 2017. And so we basically spent 2018 mostly on episode 1. We, of course, were writing all 3 episodes and that sort of thing. Then we pivoted a team towards the end of 2018 to start working on episode 2. And that was at the same time where we started this serious getting everything working on Quest as well. And then so that team was working. And then we probably pivoted, I think, John, you pivoted probably early, like, was it March, April of 2018 onto
Yeah, I think we wanted
Ep 3?
Yeah, we wanted to jump the gun a little bit. And I think we started episode 2 and 3 almost in tandem, where most effort was going into episode 2 because that was the next episode. But we already started thinking really carefully about episode 3 and making sure that was being rolled out and planned as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, so it was a bit under a couple of years for all 3 episodes and then dojos.
Yeah.
And that was a team at ILMxLAB, and then we also worked with Ninja Theory on the first episode, and we worked with Clutch Play and Virtuous, who all were terrific, and it was a great collaboration.
Yeah.
And of course supported by Oculus and Epic, as I mentioned earlier.
This was great. Thank you so much, guys. A round of applause for John and Ben for being today with us. This has been great, so interesting and insightful. Now we're going to invite all of you to come on stage with us to have a selfie together. And while doing so, we remind you that the Ask Me Everything series from AIXR is every Thursday here on Altspace. So please come on stage and let's have a selfie all together, guys.
Okay.
All right, we unplugged everybody's mic. So go ahead and say hi to yourself. My suggestion is everybody from the crowd, can you go closer back to the Vader Immortal sign?
We go back?
Go back as far as you can.
Stand
up to that, face this way. And the 3 people that were at the event, just stay up by the table and we'll come in the foreground.
Oh, we stay up by the table?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you guys stay up there. Perfect.
You want us to center up, or are we good?
That's fine. No, Mao, if you want to go back to the back, that would be great. Okay, cool. Yeah, so let's see. I'll get you all lined up. Now, why don't we go ahead and do some heart emojis? Yeah, perfect. That's great. I'll take some snapshots. Looking good. Oh, look at that. Yeah. That is pretty intense. That's okay.
Guys, thank you so much. It's been awesome.
That's great. Thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate you coming by.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Amazing work. Amazing. Absolutely breathtaking. Absolutely breathtaking.
I'm gonna go play right now.
Bye.
I can't play right now because I gotta go. It sucks. I want a quest, a rift, or whatever.
Yeah, save it up. Save up some cash.